guys, so welcome back to the music review videos. This is week 3 and we're going to be going over a sea symphony and a symphony water music, and those pieces have very similar titles, but hopefully they sound differently. If you guys have been listening to your pieces like you're supposed to, hopefully you guys know that they sound different. But we'll see. So before I get into the first piece, I want to talk a little bit about the ocean pieces that I mentioned beforehand. I don't know if you guys remember, but I had a whole slide that was just a list of pieces. And I know that was probably really boring and really confusing, but the book just gave me a list. I was like, okay, why not? And it took me forever to import all of those music files, by the way. But there's 3 pieces I want to mention from that list, and we have John Luther Adams, who wrote Become Ocean. That was the piece that was the palindrome, and I think it would be very good to remember that one in particular. We have Debussy, who wrote the piece about the sirens, and the big thing about that piece is that he had a women's choir that was performing it, and basically he said, hey, I want you guys to sing this note. I want you guys to sing a C right here. And the choir was like, hey, do you want it to be like an O or like an ah? Like, what kind of sound do you want us to make? And he was like, I don't know, you guys will figure it out. So that's the distinguishing part about that piece. And then we have Sir Edward Elgar, who wrote Sea Pictures, and that was the piece that had the soloist in the green dress, and it looked like a mermaid, and that's about it. Couldn't find any pictures of it, but she wore a green dress. That's about it. So the first piece we'll be talking about is A Sea Symphony, Movement 1 by Ralph Vaughan Williams. So Ralph Vaughan Williams, there was the 2 important things that inspired him to write this piece, which was he studied music and history at Trinity University or Trinity College, I don't really remember, and he was also inspired by Walt Whitman's book of poetry called Leaves of Grass. Big things about that. And then going into the piece, A Sea Symphony has cantata anthem form, which basically means that there's some parts with a soloist in the orchestra and some parts with a choir in the orchestra. There's some parts where it's like just choir or like just orchestra. It's just a mix. It's just a mix of different components. A big thing about this is that the soloists, some of them sing arias and some of them sing recitative operatic pieces, and the big difference between those two is that arias are kind of more emotional and get all that emotion out. A way that I loved how someone described it is that basically everything goes still, everything stops in the opera, and the person just belts out their feelings for 3 minutes. That's an aria. And a recitative piece is kind of a exposition dump when someone just kind of talks for a little bit, and those are kind of the more boring things. And another thing that A Sea Symphony had was word painting, where the music kind of ebbed and flowed like the sea. And another way to picture word painting is that if you're talking about flying or like mountains or something, that you sing or you have your instruments play really high, like that's word painting. Or if you're talking about the dirt or death, you would sing like really low and it'd be like, oh, word painting. Before I get into the next piece, I want to talk about some of the lake pieces that I mentioned. I had that whole list, I had that whole slide that was just a list of pieces about lakes, and I want to mention 2 of them. So Gordon Lightfoot, who wrote Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, it's just a really strange piece. The legend lives on from the and I think it's notable to talk about. And then my favorite out of the lake pieces is Thea Musgrave's Loch Ness, A Postcard from Scotland, and it has a big emphasis on the tuba, and I just think it's a really cool piece. So if I think it's cool, we're going to talk about it more. And so the second piece is Symphony Water Music, Movement 3, Wafting by Libby Larsen. And about Libby Larsen, she lived in Minnesota since she was 3 years old. There was a big thing about that. That's how she got inspired by the lakes, because Minnesota is land of, I don't know if it's 10,000 or 1,000 lakes, but a land of lakes. She met Aaron Copland and William Schumann, who we've talked about last year. And if you weren't here last year, well, then you missed out on 2 very great pieces and very great composers. And she won a Grammy. It's not in the book, but again, I need to emphasize that she won a Grammy. And so, with the actual piece, it was commissioned by the Minnesota Orchestra. It was named after Handel's Water Music. We talked about Handel's Water Music, where he was commissioned by King George I to play him a bunch of songs on a barge. That was it. It was named after that. It's referred to as a scherzo, which is kind of the fast, dancey movement of a symphony, and this is the third movement, and it is the scherzo movement. Instead of using normal tempo markings such as adagio or andante, she uses stuff like fresh breeze and gale and wafting, which is the piece or the part we're talking about now. And then there are 5 motifs that are present throughout, and one of them is played by muted trumpets, and it is marked in the score as con sorrento. Probably butchered the pronunciation there, but yeah. And that's basically it. It was kind of a short day. It was mainly taken up by my last review, so I'm hoping this one's a bit shorter, but I do have a little something for the end right here. I've decided to add a new segment onto the end of these videos, and it's called Name That Tune. Every week I'm gonna play one song on my wonderful oboe. Here's my oboe, if you guys haven't seen it. And you guys are going to have to name it. This week I picked something really, really easy, but the first person to shout it out can have 7 points. So let's let the games begin.